That was a good one. That was
a
one of
good
the better
one.
ones.
It's a carbonation, I think.
You gonna watch the NBA Finals tonight?
Yeah, as soon as we're done with this, we got to hop on, get that Game 6 action cranking.
What time does it start?
I think it starts at 9. So,
Eastern?
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll probably like miss a little bit of the first quarter, but that's all right.
We'll survive. Well, we're back today with a guest who I had the privilege of standing next to for an entire summer at the Bluecoats for both of our age outs. When you hear this cat's name, just Monarch Independent, Bluecoats, Troopers, the Academy, Santa Clara Vanguard, he's been all over the place. He has a wide range of experience from where he's taught and also who he's been taught by. But before we get into his background, welcome everyone to the Aged Out Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Fantini, and with me as always is...
Evan Worrell.
And remember, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe on iTunes. We're on Spotify, Podbean, although the important ones are more so iTunes and Spotify and YouTube. Every subscription helps the growth of the podcast and helps us move forward. Also, on top of those things, please follow the Instagram page and Facebook. It's all just Aged Out Podcast. Super simple to find. And so, with that, we'll start by letting Taha kind of introduce himself, let him go over how he kind of got into the drumming activity, and then we'll just go from there. What's up, man?
Cool. Not much, dude. Doing well.
Thanks for hopping on from Texas.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Is it hot down there?
Oh, absolutely. Like, our weathers are hot and hotter, and then we'll get hurricanes. So that's about it.
It's a good mix.
Oh, yeah, dude. How far? I guess my geography from Texas is pretty lackluster because most of the summers that I spent were driving through the middle of the night, halfway asleep. So where is Austin? Central Texas? Is that right?
Yeah, Austin is more like central, south central-ish, and Houston is really far south, like south.
On the Gulf, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. All right. Sick.
So how'd you get started? How'd you get your start?
Well, drumming, so like percussion obviously was just like starting in middle school, like you audition for band, you do that thing. But drum corps, one of my friends in 8th grade, actually, before I even knew what any of this was going to a drum corps show in Houston. And I went to that with them without knowing anything. The first group I ever saw was Santa Clara Vanguard 2004. I knew nothing about drums.
That's a great one to open up to.
It's a good
Literally all I knew is they had really cool hats and they like bobbed their heads, which I thought was super cool. And they played like super groovy stuff. So I always that was what got me into it. And from there, like back in the days of dial-up internet, watching the little AOL man try to run through and connect.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and you would watch those like videos, well, they'd let them buffer for like an hour or whatever of like Big Firth and Innovative, whatever, with the little intros, like they had like a little bass guitar riff.
Yeah,
the good old days.
Dude, I would religiously watch those and try and transcribe them and stuff. So I never thought I could do drum corps because there wasn't a lot of support down here, parents and everything else. But I actually got tricked into auditioning for Troopers in 2008.
How did you get tricked?
So back then, again, I'm going to date myself, but AOL Instant Messenger was like a big thing. And one of my friends from like kind of a different part of Houston hit me up and was like, hey, don't you live close to Stephen F. Austin High School? And I was like, oh yeah, it's like right down the road. And he's like, there's like this drum club thing over there. You should like come out and we can all drum. Like all of our friends are going. I was like, dope. Like what else am I going to do, on a Friday night, like high school? So I went out there and I just thought it was like literally like you're drumming. So I ended up just going there, drumming with a bunch of people. And then Brian Stevens, who was the caption head, he pulled me into his office and straight up was just like, who are you? Who? And I was like, I'm just Taha from like Clements High School. He's like, have you ever auditioned before? I was like, no. And I guess
wait, I'm auditioning?
Right.
This is an audition?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, what for what? And he's like, Troopers. And I mean, not to sound naive, but I didn't really know what that was at the time because I had followed like the major ones on YouTube, and I was like, oh, okay, that's cool, And he ended up offering me a contract right then, and I actually was like, oh no, I'm not gonna do it, like because he's just like, here's a contract. I was like, no, I don't think so.
Contract for what?
Yeah, and he basically was like, "Why not?" And he explained that it was a drum corps and everything else. And I told him my parents were not going to be about it. So very clearly, he like flipped out his little flip phone, handed it to me, and was like, "Call your parents right now." And this is like 10 p.m. on a Friday night, and it's like not that's like not something you do. And but yeah, I ended up calling them. My dad immediately like hung up on me when I said drums. He was like, "Not about it." But afterward, when we finally I got home, I talked to him about it. It was basically like I could do it as long as I could support myself. Like if I could pay for it, if I could figure it out, and I don't let it affect school, then he let me do it. So that kind of started it all. Like once I got the bug from that, I went back to Troopers in 09, and then the dream was always to do Vanguard. Did that in 10, filled the hole at the Academy in 11, and then aged out at Coates in 12. So that's kind of the drumming career.
The year you were at Vanguard was when Brian Mason was there, right?
Correct. He wrote the book that year.
Cool. Yeah, Evan and I know him from Moorhead.
Yeah, he's the percussion head. I was about to say caption head, but the percussion head for the percussive department at Moorhead where we went. But so when you went to the camp, did they have a packet, or did you not know it, or were you just like, hey, let's play these exercises?
Well, yeah, there wasn't a packet. It was like he handed like a bunch of these like kind of sight reading materials. It was a super interesting audition. A lot of it was focused on like approach and technique, and then on independence. Actually, it was like his grind that year where like there was this paper out of like a classical concert snare drum book that he wanted you to play while playing quarter notes on the other hand, things like that. The individual audition was actually on a Mylar drum.
Oh my gosh,
that's so random.
He was super weird guy, but learned a lot from him. But yeah, I had no idea that was an audition until he pulled me into the office.
That's hilarious.
That's extremely funny and very out of the norm.
Yep.
Especially today, like everybody's like buying the packets, like kids buy the packets that don't even go to the camps just so they get the beats.
Right.
Which is pretty funny. How was wearing a tie all summer for Academy?
It was interesting because, not to sound mean, but no one knew how to tie a tie except for me. And like they were real ties, like they were legitimate ties. So every time we had to get ready for a show, there was like a line of like 5 or 6 dudes in front of me that I had to tie their ties so that they could put them on. But it was we kind of messed around. That was the first year we changed uniforms at the Academy, and we messed around with like the first shows we would like go all out like in the shirt and the tie, and then it got really hot, so then we ended up doing like the shirt only, and then it got really hot in tour, so we just ended up going with the blacks and putting the shirts on later. But it was interesting. That was a very fun summer. Like people always question like going from Vanguard to Academy, and there's obviously like clear differences organizationally just from like a standpoint of where the organizations are at. But I think as far as enjoyment goes, like that group, that percussion section they gelled so well. There was like zero egos. Everyone just got along. And I think we ended up, can't remember exactly, but I know that the drum line ended up placing like 6 places above the corps or something like that, just because we were all just down for the cause, like drum and have fun.
And that was Academy in 11, right?
Yeah, Academy in 11.
And so you got that spot based on Murray, right? Is that what you said? He went?
Right. So Brian Stevens was at Troopers and Murray was at Vanguard. So I marched for both of them, and both of them ended up going to the Academy with Glenn Crosby. And I guess
Glenn, a legend.
Yeah, they told Glenn about me, and so like Brian called me in February, like tomorrow. He calls I will say this about Brian, he's like a dad. Like he calls every one of his kids every year to try and get them to march for him. And I said no, and then Matt Ramey also went there, and he called me, and I said no, and then Murray and Glenn called me in like May, and that's when I said yes to them.
So what was the hesitation? Did you have other stuff going on? Why you didn't want to march in 11?
Yeah, it was a couple of things. Like it just seemed, one, going from Vanguard, like obviously there was hesitation of like what it's going to be. Secondly, it was just the whole school thing, like actually going and getting your degree and, doing MCAT classes and studying for exams and this and that, trying to do summer research opportunities. Like there was the potential of doing like a, microbiology lab over the summer, things like that. And then the closer I got to it, the more I realized it was like that the summer is my escape. Like I do that, other stuff year round, and it's something that's important. But it was like if I didn't do the drumming thing, I think I would go crazy.
Yeah, just reset, give you a refresh, and recalibrate your brain. Take your mind off of all the crazy stuff you just talked about. Microbiology, that stuff eludes me. I read you had a neurobiology major, right?
Correct.
Is that what it was? That's pretty sick. Sounds
Yeah.
like something you and Mike are on a different level with school than me in that regard. But yeah, man, that's cool. So how was it marching then? I guess 4 straight summers on a tilt, and then going to the flat for Coates in 2012.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I see the merits to both. Like, I understand why people do either one. The tilt feels a little better for me because of like, I think ergonomics and body. But going to the flat, it wasn't as bad as people thought, except when apparently like the right hand like was slightly slicing, so I ended up having to like lift the drum up slightly higher than I would like to because I have a short torso but long arms. So that's why like the tilt felt better for me, but the flat drum was an adjustment that wasn't as major as people think it is. But I do think people overdo the tilt. Like I see some groups like even '09 Vanguard, like their drums were like almost.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, that was a super tilt.
So I think the tilt's very minimal, to be honest.
I actually had a guy that went to Moorhead with Mike and I who marched that '09 Vanguard line. Obviously the whole connection between Mason and Vanguard at the time, Moorhead, Vanguard.
Right.
But he came back and we played on a flat drum at that college band or whatever, and I was like, dude, what are your hands doing? Because their tilt was crazy severe.
Yeah.
We did a tilt this winter at Cap City. I taught there, and I mean, it was like we would like 10, 11 degrees, like at most.
Right.
Like it's pretty.
Right.
Which that's the first time I ever taught on a tilt and ever played on a tilt either, which was kind of funny. But the same way you're talking, like the change in between going from tilt to flat wasn't. I didn't find it to be super. Like I was like, all right, this feels pretty natural. I was like, I'm not really changing anything with what I'm doing mechanically. So still playing drums.
Like I can actually like nerd it out on this with someone else, just as far as like why we tilt. And I think it's a big reason to have a why, not just because like, oh, I did it when I was at Vanguard. I like tried to think through it, and it's like I think from if you're starting like strictly ergonomics and strictly like how your body is, like slight tilt. Like I think at Monarch we tilt like 9 degrees. Like I think we go between 8 and 10. And just super subtle enough where that neither hand and elbow has to be in a position that's not its natural neutral position. So that's why I still am a proponent of the tilt.
So,
I mean,
no, go ahead.
It makes sense. I mean, like you're talking about just from a physiological standpoint, the way your hands are set up, the way your wrists. I mean, you're already turning your left hand over abnormally, and people fight the wrist turn all the time to get it to where you're striking the drum head at the correct bead angle. So it's like, well, why not just make it a little bit easier on ourselves? So it's easier to do stick tricks on a flat drum, though. I'll say that.
Right.
But
so cool. I'm gonna shepherd us along here to the next topic. Speaking of Monarch, let's start there. So how did somebody who never marched indoor, you never did, right?
No, I did not.
Never marched indoor, end up being like a founding staff member of a very successful independent world indoor group? Like how did Monarch come about? Like, did you just get a phone call? Was it your idea? Because indoors, to my knowledge, at least indoor is not really a big thing in Texas. I think it's growing,
right?
But Monarch's been around for what, like 5 years now? 4 years?
Correct, 5 years.
So it makes perfect sense that a highly competitive world group could come out of Texas because band is so big, and just seems like a no-brainer. Once you guys came out and I saw the first videos the first year, and I was like, oh, this is actually solid considering they're just starting. And it made perfect sense just because of the band environment of Texas. So how did that all come about? And we'll just go from there.
Yeah. Well, actually, so I moved back to Houston, and in 2014, there was one of my friends Emily Whaley, she hit me up and asked me, like, hey, there's this independent group called Lone Star Independent out of Houston, and she was helping with that, and they needed help. Like, they needed a snare, quad tech, a battery person, because there was currently like 2 people on their staff. So I ended up helping out, and I thought I was just going to help with an audition. Ended up running the whole thing through the season as like battery and visual. They actually ended up, we went to Dayton, and I literally had no idea. Like, I never did indoor, never went to WGI. All I knew about was like videos and talking to you guys over the summer about what it is. We won independent A class, so I didn't really know what that meant, but I know we like got a gold medal. I was like, hey, that's cool. Like, I like this indoor thing,
Winning is fun.
Yeah, and then unfortunately, like most Texas groups in 2015, the group folded. Just wasn't able to sustain, and I got a call from another friend, Zach Harston, who was, I guess, Monarch was becoming a thing. Like, there was an idea, it wasn't really formed, and he asked me to come like be part of the staff. And so it was created by a couple of people. Like, there was Rob Sullins, Kyle Wynn, Chris King, like a couple of people in Houston got together, decided like you said, Texas and Houston, we need like a group that is sustainable, that's an outlet for people, that's an educational resource. And they formed it. They formed the group, they got it up and running, and then they built a staff. And, Eric Ridenour was supposed to be the music caption head that year, and he actually interviewed me. He hired me on staff. And I got there, and again, I think just because of a series of events, most of the people that were hired on staff were unable to do it. So it actually ended up being myself, Emily Whaley, and one more person again, where it just, when you fall into that position, and I had recruited most of the kids. Like, I was like, if I'm going to teach this thing, I'm going to recruit my own kids. So I reached out to all these people I knew about, like, kind of what would be considered talent down in Texas, and reached out to them, kind of told them about the thing. The first year was kind of easy because the dues were only $900. So we,
that's nice.
Yeah, we were able to like market it that way. And when that happened, we had a 5-year plan. Like, when, all the staff bailed, they actually, like, the director pulled me in and kind of said like, hey, like, can you take over? Can you run the thing? And it's like, sure. And there was a 5-year plan of being A class for 5 years, kind of establishing a foundation, allowing the thing to grow naturally and kind of organically, and then going to open class. And then when we're ready, making the plunge to world. The group actually got bumped the first year before the first show. So I guess that was a doing of, it was WGI kind of reached out and said, like, we posted like you said, like a video of like our audition camp or something like that, and things like that. And they're like, hey, like, just to be smart, you should probably not go A class. And
was this 15?
It was, 2015. And so we went open class that year, and then the next year, 16, we were flagged to get bumped to Worlds mid-season. And then so 17, it was basically like the director had a meeting with me and was like, look, like, I know you don't think we're ready, but we're going to need to jump to World, because if we want the designers to design a world-class show, if we want to keep pushing and, pushing the boundaries of what we can do as a group, then we're going to need to go World. So we took the plunge in that summer, and it's ended up being good so far, like kind of just trying.
I'll say, where'd you all finish this year?
We were 7th this year.
Yeah, I mean, what's your 4th or 5th year? 5th year?
5th year total, third year in world class.
So considering the initial plan when the group started was to be A class for 5 years, and that after those 5 years you all got 7th in world, I think you guys are doing something right.
It's been a fun. So I think the thing that has allowed us to get to that spot, obviously the staff around us is great. Like, I'm humbled every single day that literally we're working with people that run their own groups. They're all part of like drum corps staffs. They're doing great things. But I think the biggest thing is the admin has been incredible. They kind of sit me down every year, and we literally talk about what we need to improve. Like, not looking at any other groups, not looking at the activity, just what we as an organization, what Monarch needs to improve to make us work better and operate more efficiently. So I think it's good that we're constantly like putting the microscope on ourselves as an organization, and we've decided to split the admin and the instructional side of things, which in my opinion is extremely beneficial because the teachers get to teach and the admin get to do all the logistics and business, and not having to delve, or put your hand in both of those things allows everyone to focus on what they're like there to do.
Yeah, for sure.
The setup that you're describing is the most efficient way to optimize everybody's output and what they're able to bring to the table. There were several times this winter when I was teaching, it was my first year at CAP teaching the snare drums, and I would be like, hey, do we need to like tell the members like this, and this? And they'd be like, no, admin takes care of that. And I'm like, great. Like that just takes, kids aren't coming to me asking like, hey, where are the showers this weekend? Like, no, somebody else is figuring that out. I don't have to worry about it. And I think that sort of mindset of self-assessing is the way people get better and grow each year. You're worried about being great, and the results or doing well are a product of trying to just make yourself better other than just trying to chase a placement, so to speak. So I'm down with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
And then you guys have a lot of exercises. I watched that video. Was it the flow marching video? I was like, man, there's a lot to learn. That's one thing I do not envy with this generation's kids. Everything's cool and hip, but it's like, man, that's a lot of notes to learn.
Yeah. The exercise thing, it was interesting. I mean, the first thing I ever saw, like I said, was Vanguard 04. And that was like, I remember clearly, like just being in that lot was like, that was life changing. Right. And so what I tried to do is influence, like the backgrounds are for Marie and Mike, the biggest influences, obviously. And the challenge that I always have is I try and take the most basic exercises. Like literally, if you actually just take the snare part for any of those exercises, they are like the Sanford Shuffle and they are paradiddle breakdowns. They're nothing difficult. And then I try and make them sound like they're groovy and difficult. But if you just play them, they're literally breakdowns. They're primers that you would do with high school kids.
That's funny because that's.
No, go ahead.
That was Vanguard lines. Obviously, 04 played like basic strokes, like slits and giggles, cheesy poofs, flamus. Like they're just like going hard, like a wheelchair.
It's cool.
Great.
It's cool to hear you say you like to keep it simple, because that's kind of the teaching philosophy with all the high school kids that I've taught throughout the years. It's just keep it stupid simple. Like you have to understand how to properly play the basic skill sets, because everything you play is just a combination of those skill sets at the end of the day. So it's cool. It's cool to hear that that's just like a more widely used approach, and I'm not crazy.
Right.
Another throwback. I used to have that 04 Vanguard DVD, the lot tunes or whatever, and I would like throw it on and try to play all the exercises with them. I just now remember that. That's funny.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, man. And for high school thing, it's like I use the same exercises. It's just the bass part's probably the only thing that's different. Like Monarch's bass line obviously was more skilled than your average high school line. So, but the snare and quad parts, they're pretty simple.
That probably helps with translating your kids if they happen to be good enough to go to Monarch. They're already being played. They're already going to have been playing those exercises for quite a while. So. And the approach, the continuity of approach, it's just all a system that feeds itself. It's pretty cool.
Well, speaking of that, this will kind of segue, and Mike, you can take us down a different road if you want. But so you're talking about the same things that you would give to your high school kids, very similar. You actually work with, or have worked with, quite a few high schools in the area, right? Was it Claremont, Cy-Fair, Cy-Falls, etc., List or something like that? Do you like go between all these schools, or like is that just schools that you have worked with over the past?
I actually, so at first, like when I first started teaching, it was, I guess there's like as weird as it sounds, there's a scarcity for drum techs down in this area. And back then it was just whoever asked, I would be like, yeah, sure, I can come help out. Like, yeah, sure. And it would just be like I never thought I was going to teach, but it was like a day thing here, a day thing there. At one point, I was doing like one school a day, so each day of the week was a different school. And but my biggest reason for that was because, like, and we can dive into this later, but it was trying to spread the footprint a little bit more. Like you said, trying to build a culture down in Texas where I didn't really feel like it was down here. When we talk about the Texas band scene, like I'll dive more into why, but now currently I'm mainly with two groups, Cypher and Clear Brook. Those are the two that kind of, it's a year-round investment because they do indoor and outdoor. So those are the groups that I work with.
Yeah, I think the Texas band scene, from the outside perspective, from us up here in Kentucky, like we see the great BOA bands, like these super phenomenal fall programs, and that kind of seems to be, at least from the marching perspective, like outside of concert band, obviously they're taking care of business there, or they wouldn't be as good as successful outside. But like they put their eggs in the marching basket when it comes to like marching percussion versus like WGI indoor guard or percussion or winds or anything like that. But
right,
is that a fair assessment, I guess?
Yeah, in a way. So I think the marching bands obviously are like extremely skilled down in Texas, and I think the competition drives the demand for it to be better. And each group is like incredible. But I think from a percussion standpoint, there's this thing called UIL down here. It's like the governing body of high school, basically. It's like NCAA. It's just a giant overarching like entity. And so UIL, go ahead.
Because UIL, from my understanding, does sports and like extracurricular, like so sports, cheerleading, band, like you name it, right?
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, it's literally the thing, and it has its own like rule books. It has its own like literally it's NCAA basically if you talk about it, and that in itself, and this is opinion, and I feel like I might ruffle some feathers, but in itself doesn't value percussion as much. Like there was a stigma, and it's changing slowly but surely, but there's a stigma that if the percussion was heard in the marching show, they were too loud. That's just the stock Texas thing. When I was growing up, we literally were backside line, 4 steps in front the whole show. And, back then it was like, you can't play above mezzo piano, because if you even are covering the winds like the slightest bit, then you're too loud. And the reason for that was the judging system in UIL is extremely arbitrary. There's 3 judges or 4 judges that kind of just judge the show. Like there's no specific like captions or anything like that. It's like, and you give them ordinals. So they score you by points, and then they put ordinals out for these groups. And the lowest, it's like a golf, like the lowest number is the first place, et cetera, et cetera. But there are groups whose ordinals literally, like you can look on the recaps, like there's a group that got like first, third, second, 15th, 34th, because one judge just decided they were 34th place,
Wow.
And there's no like rhyme or reason. There's nothing behind it. So what ended up happening is the percussion side of it got really devalued. But the wins are obviously like incredible because that's what they focus on. Now with like the extreme like surgeness of BOA, it's changing a little bit because more and more people are putting value into every caption, like color guard, percussion, wins, like visual, everything has value to it. So I feel like it's changing now for the better. My biggest thing was just the fairness aspect, like give your percussionist the same value. Like I was told in high school that marching band doesn't matter. You need to focus on your concert playing because that's what's going to get you further in life. And so the concert side I think is great and it's absolutely necessary, but it got to a point where they were pushing that so hard that they forced marching band to not be important. And they didn't want you to do drum corps. They didn't want you to do indoor because they wanted you to do concert band so much because it's a class period,
That's wild to hear about because, like Evan said, our view in Kentucky of Texas is like it's one of the band meccas, like one of the marching band meccas, like all facets, guard, percussion. Now, I've admittedly not seen my exposure to different Texas bands is pretty low. But I'd always just had this image in my head that Texas band was just grade A quality across the board in every aspect. And I will say it makes perfect sense now to hear that you were forced to play so quiet in high school. That's how your quality at the low end. That's why it's so good. Dude, I don't know if I've ever told you, Evan, Taha's taps, like he could play lower than anyone I've ever met on a marching snare drum and have it sound really good.
That's awesome.
I don't know. It makes sense now. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah. I guess that makes sense too. Like Mike saying, like from our perspective, like what we see from miles and miles away, like the groups that we're exposed to are the groups that are like nationally recognized, like the Ronald Reagans, like this and that, all the Claudia Taylor Johnsons, like that. Like, so, and Texas is obviously a huge state, and I could probably tell you only 10 bands there. So those 10 bands I probably know for a reason. But we had the same issue in Kentucky in regards to judging, and sometimes the people that are on the panel want to feel the percussion section but not actually hear it, type of thing. And it gets devalued in the fact that they're not necessarily well versed in what they're judging from a percussive standpoint, because they have a more wind focus or brass focus or visual focus, that sort of thing. And I think that the marching thing, my perspective on that has shifted so much, because I look at it as an experience for kids to give them a positive experience. And I was talking with a friend of mine who's a percussion instructor here. He teaches, and he was like, yeah, man, my pedagogy changed so much over the years just because I stopped trying to give every person the well-rounded percussion experience. He's like, I still give them that opportunity to have that if they want to. He's like, and he's had a successful program. He's like, but over the 12 years I've been teaching, I've had 3 kids go on to major in music, which I gave them the tools that they need in order to be successful at that, and I give them the knowledge. But if Joe just really likes to play snare drum and Kevin just really likes to play marimba, like, I'm just gonna let them do that, because that's what they're getting enjoyment out of, and they're probably not gonna make a career out of it.
Right, and so this exact conversation I had with people not only in Texas but the staff from BK, because they're from SoCal. And so for us, like, you start in percussion in middle school, but when I was taught percussion from a trumpet player. Like, it wasn't a percussionist, because in middle school you have 2 band directors. One teaches woodwinds and the other teaches brass and percussion. And then when I got to high school, my percussion director was also an assistant band director. They were a percussion specialist, but their focus was the band. So there were times in concert bands, and I don't mean to hate on concert band, but I know that my experience was that I sat in the back of the band hall. We played a 30-minute repertoire, and I had 1 triangle note out of those 30 minutes.
Lots of tacit time.
Yeah, so for us, we were just sitting there, so it made my experience feel as if concert band wasn't as important. Now, I'm sure if I was the only percussionist in that band and I was playing all the parts, I would feel more valued, right? But that's the thing, is we had 8 or 9 percussionists in one band, and each person had to divvy up the parts where it wasn't that. Nowadays, it's changing in the sense that there's a new paraprofessional position that opens up, and that person is just a percussion specialist, that they are allowed to go to the middle schools. They start the beginners. They also, during the high school classes, they get to take the percussionist out of that class period and do percussion ensemble. So I feel like if that was my experience, I would have a really different perspective or viewpoint of the concert scene, because that's all I did was the concert band thing until I got to drum corps, and so now it's more and more people are taking that approach of like you said, making it, statistically speaking, just in general, I don't think many high school kids, winds or percussion, do music as a major. Most of the kids in band are the ones that are like, they're going to be doctors and engineers and lawyers, and like, they're the smart kids in school, like they're the ones who are like really pushing the SAT scores and boundaries, and there's statistics to represent that how band kids are just scoring higher on these standardized tests. So like you said, my biggest thing, just high school, Monarch, Blue Knights, anywhere, is that the member experience and giving them valuable life lessons is way more important than trying to make them a cog in the system of like, you need to be the next music ed major. Because I think some of the most influential teachers that I've ever had are not music ed majors. but they've changed my life.
Yeah.
Agreed. Like my people that taught me private lessons, the people who like taught me, like my percussion section leaders from marching band, or instructors who I'm now friends with, like those people impacted my life in a positive way. And like that's what it's about, because there's X number of marching band director jobs out there, and we're all just a bunch of band nerds. Like I knew I loved band, but I was like, I'm not about like my God bless the people that are teach in bands. Like my wife's a band director, and I walk in there, I'm like, I could never do this ever in a classroom setting, but those kids still want to do the activities, so got to give them what they want.
Right.
And I will say my high school experience was kind of exactly what Taha just described in Kentucky here in Louisville. I just wanted to play snare drum. I knew I didn't start band until I was 14. At freshman in high school, there was no band at my private grade school that I went to. And I just really fell in love with marching snare drum. I didn't want to play xylophone. I didn't want to play anything else. Like I considered it my competitive sport, basically. And but because there was this culture of pushing just being a well-rounded percussionist and being exposed to X, Y, and Z so you can go on. It's like, look, I don't need to know how to do this. I just like I wouldn't have been in band class if it was an option to not take band class and be in marching band after school.
Yeah.
Like I would have taken other classes. And it always infuriated me that I just couldn't do what I wanted to do. Now, I never quite had the experience where I had one triangle note in an entire piece. I had some pretty shallow parts throughout my high school years, but typically, like, because I was pretty good at snare drum, I had hands and could play rhythm, so they had me play some marimba parts and xylo parts for various things that I was able to do, but I didn't enjoy it. I didn't want to be there. I mean, I butted heads. Now, it turns out my band director knew a little bit more than I like to think that he did when I was in high school. You know, you think you know it all when you're 16. But at the end of the day, I just like didn't want to be there. And I would have had a lot more fun and maybe been better at snare drum younger if I'd been allowed to just do that and not have to spend time on other stuff that I knew I was never going to use.
And I feel like in that regards, like I was a marimba player. I played marimba literally from 9th grade through 12th grade. Like that's what I did. But I think the bigger thing, like you stated, is that if some kid finds something fun, like why would you, it seemed almost as if they were going to take that one away because you weren't doing the other standardized thing they were telling you to do. Right.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It felt like if you're going to say well-rounded percussionist, I'm really sensitive to that because then we're not making well-rounded percussionists. Like we're making people who can play marimba, timpani, and concert snare. That's not well-rounded. Like why not get a drum set clinician and teach all the kids how to play drum set? Why not get a hand drum person and teach them how to play tabla? You know, why not bring in an Latin percussionist and teach them that? Like we're only teaching kids 3 instruments and calling them well-rounded. And I don't feel like that's accurate, you know?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
so,
there's so many facets. Like how could you even like start to begin to say like, oh, these kids are well-rounded? It's like, nah, like they just know more things maybe than one thing. But yeah, I feel that. So
this next thing I want to jump onto here is kind of changing the subject a little bit, but just to steer us in a different direction. We've discussed on here quad drumming specifically before, and we actually had somebody reach out, and Evan, his name escapes me. He marched United percussion as a quad player. I can't remember his name.
Jimmy, I'm going to butcher the last name. Tui?
Yeah.
Sorry, Jimmy.
Sorry, Jimmy, if we butchered your last name. But how's the quad drumming in Texas? Because there seems to be this recurring theme of, is quad drumming, and you might be able to speak to this from your experience at Monarch and Blue Knights, like, are you guys having trouble finding quality quad drummers? Because it seems to be that every season, all these like indoor groups are like, hey, we still have quad spots open. Hey, we need quad players. Like, are just kids not playing it because of the weight, or they just don't think it's important? Or, I mean, is that a thing you experience in your teaching? Or
I think it's kind of like going back to that thing we were talking about as far as scarcity creates its own demand. And in what we were saying, that at least in Texas, like before when I was growing up, the only things that mattered were snare drum and marimba. Like that was it, right? So everyone would, quote, stack their lines with the good players playing snare drum and marimba. Now I think it's definitely, I feel like the activity goes through waves. Like snare drumming was a thing to do before, and then it became like quad drumming, and then now it's like bass drumming. Like the things bass drummers are doing are just ridiculous,
Oh,
right?
dude, that's a whole
Yes.
topic on its own. Bass
Right.
lines have gotten ridiculous.
Right. And I feel like it comes in waves. The biggest reason I see that there's less quad drummers is because there's less people who teach quad drums, right? Like most
Yep.
people who come back to teach. And again, it's because of the amount, like there's less people teaching than there are groups to be taught,
Mhm.
right? And in that regards, because again, most, and we can't blame the kids, but most of the kids who do drum corps, who do these things, they end up going to college and getting jobs. Like there aren't techs, right? Whereas in California, there's literally a snare tech, quad tech, bass tech, and caption head for each school. So when you have that resource available, I feel like you're obviously going to get better. In Texas, like I know for me, at least the high schools I teach at, like I'm the only battery person. Like we can't hire, like it's either you hire a battery person, that's it, or you hire a front person, that's it. There's no such thing as like, oh, we're going to hire a bunch of these techs, or if you do, you're paying them not what they should be paid, right? Like it's barely anything. So you can't afford to have someone full time. So do I feel like there's less talented quad drummers? No, I just feel like there's less resources for quad drummers to be good because no one teaches them. Like quad drumming is so specific as far as you need to know different motions and mechanics and what the zones are, and there's patterns, right? And those types of things. Like when these kids go to drum corps auditions, they don't succeed because say like we throw at them like, hey, put this on the 7/8 pattern. They have no idea what we're talking about because they've never been told. All they know is like they play the music that's given to them that's taught by a snare drummer. So I think for us, what we experienced at Monarch was in 2017, it was our first year going world class. We had a brand new quad line. Like all four of those kids were brand new. And we've actually retained three of them since 17. So 17, 18, 19, three of them have been marching for me. And three of them, those three actually are actually at Blue Nights this summer as well. So I think it's,
so say that again.
so there's three kids, Nick, Shane, and Austin, who marched in 2017 at Monarch. And they marched 2018 at Monarch as well, 2019 at Monarch. There are three of those. So Austin, Shane, and Nick are all at Blue Nights this summer marching quads.
Nice.
So Blue Knight's quad line's about to be nasty.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
You heard it here first, kids.
We'll get it. Yeah, that's cool. Did you guys do your Vic vids yet at BK?
We're actually ProMark now.
Oh, are you? Oh,
Yeah.
Did Mike switch to ProMark?
No. Mike's still Vic, and he has no say. Kevin Shaw is actually ProMark.
Okay.
And so the organization went ProMark because the Dario connection. So we're Evans and ProMark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were they Remo last year?
Yeah, we were Remo.
So this will
Change it up.
actually allow us to segue perfectly in what we want to end on and talk about the Blue Knights. I know. Have you guys revealed your show yet?
They have not.
Yeah, I didn't think so. So
Everything's a big secret these days.
I know. So if you
Right.
guys are ProMark, you're obviously not using Mike's snare sticks, right? And when I say Mike, I mean Mike Jackson. For those that
Correct.
aren't aware,
Correct.
who are you?
Are
What
you using
sticks
the
are you
fire
guys using?
grains?
Yeah. So I think right now we were experimenting between either the Tim Fairbanks, the fire grain ones, or the Jeff Ostimars.
What do you think of Tim's sticks? His new ones, those fire grains.
They're good. Obviously, I think with sticks, it's again, this is going to get really nerdy, but I feel like it's each style has its own stick that plays well to it, which is why people come out with different sticks, right? Like if
Yeah,
you're going to play a certain style book, that person's stick feels great. Obviously, the like style I teach, the style I play, there's certain sticks that feel really good for that approach. The Fairbanks sticks, I think, just taking that aside, like personal bias aside, and talking strictly like facts, I think they're dense and they're heavy, which is good. They have a kind of medium shortish taper, so the rebound's not as quick, but there's a lot of like low end control, which you can play a lot like faster diddles with it. The bead is more like round and oval, so the footprint gives a much like denser sound when it hits the drum.
Okay.
They're beefy.
Yeah, I was at like for me, personal
Yeah.
preference. I don't
Yeah.
like super beefy sticks, so I'm not a huge fan. Like the high school I teach at in Louisville, we used them last season, and we're probably not going to use them this season.
Right.
They're just a
Right.
little too beefy. I feel like for high school kids to succeed well with, I think they're a little too. I guess, chop demanding, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like obviously they're going to rebound well, but you need chops to manipulate them and understand how to use rebound to your advantage and all that stuff. But for me, like you can ask Evan, I like light sticks, but I have heavy hands. So like I know at Blue Coats in 2012, I played loud a lot.
Right.
And it's just, I mean, I started my drum corps career at the Blue Stars, and we beat the living shit, pardon my French, out of the drums like it owed us money. Like we just, now we had relaxed hands, but there was the weight of like our entire arms behind it. So I just learned to do that. And I have big hands also. So I don't know if I ever told you this, but you know how in 12 they gave us 3 pairs of sticks finals week, one for quarters night, one for semis, and one for finals.
Yeah.
So my quarter sticks, I still have them and use them to this day, are super light. They're very high pitched, so they feel great, but they're light. And so I used them on quarters night. Everything was fine. And then my semis and finals pairs were like Lincoln Logs. Like they were high pitched, but they were just really, really heavy. And so I think finals day, I grabbed the sticks that were supposed to be my final sticks. And there was a rep, like we were in snare subs, and Mike and Roger were in front of us, and Shriver, and we played one of the charts. And Mike came over to our side of the snare line and was like, something sounded weird down here. Did you guys hear it? And I was using the heavy sticks. It was me. Yeah. And so I instantly turned around, threw in my backpack, and grabbed my quarter sticks. Next rep, he came back over and he goes, all right, cool. That was fine. Great. Good job.
Right.
I mean,
That's funny.
I have to use them. I don't know if it's probably in my head a little bit. I got inside my own head sometimes, but it was all right by the end of the season.
Are you guys still rocking the Mapex out there?
Yeah, we're doing.
What do you
Mapex
think of those things?
White.
What do you think of those drums?
They're interesting. Like I've actually been, I guess, fortunate, you could say, to use so many different brands, like whether marching, teaching. The Mapex drums themselves, they're interesting in the sense that, like, obviously they're beautiful drums. They have white hardware that they customize for us. The print is great. But as far as the actual sound, like, I think they have kind of different layers of wood. Obviously I'm a pearl artist, so I prefer pearl. But just the sound itself, to me, you have to adjust your tuning to make it sound the way you want to. And I feel like that's the case for most drum companies. Like with the Mapex snare drum specifically, if you tune them the exact same as another company, they're going to sound slightly more hollow and slightly more like open. So I have to change the way I tune and tune the guts differently, use tape different spots to make them sound how I want them to sound. But I feel like a lot of the drum stuff comes down to who's tuning and how you're tuning. That way you can make the drums sound how you want them to.
For sure. Cool. You have to mix it up again this year too with the new bottoms. Rocking those MX5s, right?
Yep.
Oh, I love that head.
It's
such a good bottom head.
Yeah.
So let's kind of talk about Blue Knights a little more. How did that gig come about? Did Mike just reach out to you because he needed a snare tech? Did you reach out to him? How did it kind of start?
Yeah. So in 2014, when Mike took the gig at Blue Knights, he's just on a different level when it comes to like philosophy and intellect, and he wanted to save the Corps money. So for all these satellite camps, he would actually reach out to people who were local to that area to try and see if he could save flights for the staff. Because if a satellite camp is like 5-hour day, if you're going to fly someone from Southern California to Texas with the time difference and then flying back, like that didn't make sense to him fiscally. So what he ended up doing was he called me and said, hey, are you in Texas? And I was like, yeah, I'm still in Texas. And he's like, can you do this camp with me? And so in 2014, 2015, I did the camps for him in Texas. And we kept in touch and we were talking about other things. And those 2 years of Blue Knights, those were my favorite shows on the field, like the 1 second show and the Because show. And that's just what I gravitate towards more. And in 2015 on finals day, like, everyone hangs out afterward. I saw Mike and Veronica and all them, and I was talking to them. And it kind of came up about like what my plans were for the future, like, because I was teaching Spirit at the time. And, I think for me, it wasn't like I was just trying to get out of Spirit, but it was the opportunity of Blue Knights was the opportunity. Like that was
working with Mike, like
right.
More. Yeah.
Exactly.
And that was the only place that I would want to work. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm just trying to jump ship. It was that the opportunity that I wanted came up, and we talked about it, and he was like, absolutely, like let's let's do this thing. And so when I was brought on board, there was still, I was the third technical snare tech. But life happened with the other two snare techs, and I actually ended up doing the most time that summer. So since then, I've kind of like been there since 16 doing the gig, and it's been great. Like, I would never leave that organization.
To me, it just seems like being able to work with Mike and listen to the information, because I've listened to some interviews that he's done, and I think the podcast he's done before, just listening to him articulate words, like inform sentences from the thoughts in his brain. I'm just like, man, this dude's brain works in a whole different way than mine, which is really cool. And then a lot of that obviously translates into the music and the emotion that he gets out of his writing, and the dynamic contrast that just he throws on a snare drum. I'm just like, man, this is crazy. Like,
yeah,
right.
It was definitely, for me, it was one of the highlights of my marching career. I've been lucky enough to have been taught by a lot of different people across the activity, and it was awesome to march for him for a summer. And I couldn't imagine what it'd be like to teach for him. Just how much more knowledge you would get to absorb from him about everything.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing with him is he's so passionate about, taking care of things the right way, and he, like, more so than anything else, he wants the members to feel good. And it's never about him. Like, I know people say that all the time, but he's one of the most selfless humans I've ever met. Like, he is very much just about the art and what we're trying to say. And he brings no, like, I feel like he could, because he's such a big name in the activity, but he has no ego. Like, when he's talking to you as like a friend, as a peer. It's never like, I'm your boss. When he's talking to the kids, it's like a dad. He's not trying to berate them. There's literal times where the kids, like, they're making mistakes, right? And we're, quote, dirting out things. And instead of yelling, instead of raising his voice, his, like, initial reaction is to give the kids a break. And the way he described it to us one time was, if George Clooney comes in to act a scene and he's not getting it, he's missing the mark, would they make him do push-ups, and would they make him run a lap? Or would you just cut scene, take a 5-minute water break, and try again? And so he treats it very much as a mental, professional, activity, as opposed to just like, this is how we do it and this is what we're going to do. It's very much, everything has a reason why. Like, if you're going to do something, there has to be a why behind it.
I think that makes a lot of sense too, just because at that level, talking about DCI world class, WGI world class, typically the members have the ability to play things the way that they need to play them. Of course, like, you still got to build chops, like, figure out the technical aspects that you're going to need to perform these. That's always going to be there. Chop out, I get it. But at some point, you're going to reach a point where, I know you can do this. We're just not doing it. Mm-hmm. So we could rep this 500 more times and get the same result. I've heard people talk about Macintosh in that kind of same light. Like, hey, let's just go sit in a tree for a minute and, like, we'll come back. Like it's more of a mental game than it is a physical. Right. In my experience, and I'm sure a lot of people's experience with drum corps, is that it was definitely mentally more challenging than it ever was physically. And it's still physically hard, but you're just going and going and going and getting beat down. It's like, all right, just need to relax. So,
I mean, that goes to the whole thing that's present in professional sports. Just to compare it to a different environment of, there's a lot of athletes out there that are physically good enough to play at a professional level, but at the end of the day, it's the mental game that separates them from people below them. Can they show up and do it every single time? Can that kicker hit that 40-yard field goal 9 out of 10 times versus the guy that can hit it but can only hit it half the time?
Or when the pressure's on.
Exactly. Right. When you get to the top drum corps and the top, like, drum lines in the summer, and the same thing goes for indoor, like, all those groups are phenomenal. They have all played perfect reps of their book at some point, or near as perfect as possible. And it's the ones that have the mental chops and have been mentally, I don't want to say taken care of, but it's part of the staff job is towards the end of the season, I think, and this is coming from someone that's never taught drum corps, so correct me if I'm wrong, it comes down to managing your members' mentality. And like, because you've done it enough. You know the parts, you know the drill, your body can physically do it. It's about making sure your members' mental state is in the right place to successfully do that when it's time to do it, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, like you said, I think literally, I honestly believe every single group out there is incredible. And I think the difference being that everyone has different things that are important to them and different priorities. So I know, like, for us, it's never about the scores. Like, Mike has never talked about scores, replacements, or we're not trying to get this position. It's never about that. And that's why I stay to work there. Because, I mean, just anyone will tell you working drum corps is not financially responsible. You know, it's not a decision that you should be making. But it's something that when we think about what's important to us, it's important to us to for at least as a staff member of Mike's, to make his vision come to life and what he has to say. He always describes to us about how his priority is not what's going to be clean or how to do that. His priority is that he wants to convey motion, like an emotion, and he wants to convey, it's almost like a language. He's like, if you're listening to someone talk French and you don't know how to speak French, you can at least understand what they're saying by the dialect and the inflections and the tone. And he's like, if I can make my writing feel like that, like if he wants to portray water, like what would water sound like? You know, if he wants to portray this, like what would that sound like? And he has such a different process when it comes to that. And then, like you said, for us as staff members, we're the technicians. Like he's like the blueprints, and we go in and interpret what he says and try and make that come to life. And at least at Blue Knights, like the caption head, Veronica Wicks, I've never met someone who's that good at what they do while managing everything. Like she's the perfect person to run Mike's group, because she has a master's in social work. So she totally understands how to handle and manage people. And she's able to delegate that, keep the members, you know, in mind as far as what they can and can't do physically. And she is also the staff coordinator of Blue Knights. So she's able to like structure the schedules that way, you know, give the kids more breaks. We're able to understand what the kids need, because honestly, like the activity is so crazy now with how expensive it is. It's just a shame that these kids are having to pay this much time, you know, and money to not have an experience that they enjoy, you know. So that, I think, as far as Blue Knights goes, like the whole staff, like what Mike and Kevin have, you know, permeated down to all of us through Veronica and the rest of the staff, we all agree, like, what's important to us. Obviously, we're trying to be clean. Everyone's trying to be clean. I don't think any group goes out there and is like, hey, today we want to suck and dirt out this role. Right?
It's fun to be clean and good.
Right.
Of course,
exactly.
Of course.
You know, but I think when it comes to like what our priority is, like we're never going to demean a kid or yell at a kid if they're playing poorly, because we know that's not their intent, right? Like the intention shapes their experience. And it's like, say it all the time, like someone could look at a house and like an architect and see like a structure, a building, and all the logistics that went into building the house. But a thief could look at that house and just see the exits, the windows, you know, exit routes. So it's like you're looking at the same house, but you're seeing it totally different. So I feel like that's kind of the community nowadays. Like everyone on YouTube and this and that, you know, you're looking at certain things, and if you don't have the right intention when you're looking at it, you're like, oh, that book's easy, or these people suck, or they're not doing it, just because it's not the way you would do it, right? And I think Mike and the Blue Knights staff doesn't care about that. They're there to do their thing, because we're doing it for the people who want that to be their thing, right? We're not doing it for, quote, the haters. It's just for the people who want that, you know?
Oh, dude, we could talk about that for hours, but social media, it's almost become the cool thing to like be the first person to be like, this sucks. Like everybody's like, dude, like, what are you talking about? Like, no, it doesn't. Like, but there's always going to be those people out there just like tear stuff down, and they just want to troll, and that's what they do. But at the end of the day, like you said, the perspective that you have on it is, are you trying to look at this with the mindset of appreciating it, or are you just trying to look at it to be a grumpy old person or the grumpy old man, so to speak? So to say, I guess. But and any sort of art is going to get that on both sides. But I would just hope that most people appreciate it. I think that at least one thing we try to do on the podcast is, obviously Mike and I do critique people, but it's with a level, and I've had some people message me, it's like with a level of always the intent, like everybody's working hard. I get that, but like
we're not demeaning. Anytime we critique anyone throughout the DCI season or WGI season, we're not critiquing the effort or the intent, or because everyone's working hard. What we're doing is we're taking more of it's like thinking of sports analysts on ESPN that are critiquing these basketball teams or these soccer teams and making predictions about who's going to win and lose. Like, we're trying to take a little bit of that kind of approach when we do the critique stuff. Right. So yeah, we're going to say, like, if we watch, like, we'll do, like, I think we try to do the San Antonio regional and then finals maybe are the last 2 episodes of the season. And we'll talk about, do we agree with the judge scores? What did we like? Didn't we like? Like, for example, we thought the cadets in, what was the church show 2 years ago?
I think it was 17, I believe.
Yeah, like, we thought the cadets got dogged all summer for no reason. Like, we vehemently, like, disagreed with them getting 7th or 8th every night. Like, it blew our minds, and we didn't understand how it was happening. But it doesn't mean we said the groups they should have beat were bad. I mean, but also at the same time, we do call a spade. And if some group doesn't play well at the San Antonio regional, we're gonna say, yeah, that group just didn't have a good run. Like, a lot of roles were fuzzy. Like, something was
people
up.
Have off nights.
Yeah,
Steph Curry, LeBron James.
I know,
the
throughout our
Cavaliers
careers,
might have an off night. Like, who knows?
Like I know Evan probably had bad days. You probably had bad days. I know I had bad days on tour where you weren't playing well or your head was weird or whatever. And so I think there is a place for a level of objective critique, but from a point of view that is not derogatory or demeaning to what anyone is doing. It's more of just analyzing the placements from a competitive standpoint and give us more to talk about, you know.
Yeah. And like you said, like, I think what you guys are doing is great on this podcast, because you're utilizing it as a resource of, like, what we would do normally as if we're hanging out, right? Yeah. Like, if we're just sitting on a couch talking, and I feel like you can't ever tell people not to do that, right? Like, literally, like, on the bus, we'll talk about, like, same things. Like you said, it's more of a point of, like, I think everyone who's marched in the activity, I tend to believe everyone is trying to do good. I'm at least going to hope that, you know, but everyone who marched in the activity understands that. Like, I don't ever see it that way. It was funny because Mike and I had this conversation on a bus ride, actually. Like, people think drum corps staff buses get crazy. It's like, not for us. We literally sit and talk about, like, philosophy. We talked about, like, YouTube comments and just how social media, and like you said, it can be a totally different, like, podcast. Like, we could probably spend hours on it, but how that it's usually not the people who are participating in it that tend to comment on it. You know, it's a crazy world in itself, because you're able to hide behind the anonymity of your screen, right? Like the whole Black Mirror thing. Like, you're literally behind, and you don't have to face it. You know, like, those people, I'm sure, wouldn't say that stuff if they were standing in front of whoever they're talking about. You know,
it's kind of funny. And Crown recently posted their Vic Firth, like, learn the licks or whatever, and, like, the first comment by this dude was like, "Oh, this isn't that good," and I was like, "Who is this guy?" And I clicked on him, and not that I am popular in this activity, like, I don't have my signature stick or this or that or blah blah blah, but it is a small network of people. But I click on this dude, 0 mutual friends. I'm like, well, that's not a good sign. Like, I've gotten to know a pretty broad array of people from all different decades of this activity, and I'm very fortunate for that. But I'm like, all right, this guy probably has absolutely no clue or no dog in this fight at all. Like, whatever.
Right.
So, but yeah.
Well, cool.
Haters gonna hate.
Yep. Yeah. In every sport, activity, whatever, there's haters everywhere. But
right.
So, Evan, you got anything else? Anything we didn't? We talked about Blue Knights a little bit. Monarch, how it got started. Taha's background. We touched on
Texas, as usual. I'm sure there's something that as soon as we get off, we'll be like, oh, we should have talked about that.
Oh, but yeah.
Off the top of my head, Nah, that's a pretty good segue. We ended talking about sports analyzing because I'm about to go watch this game here in a second.
Yeah,
Right.
it's probably towards the end of the first quarter. You guys, you guys think the Warriors are going to pull it off? Are they going to come back?
I
think anytime it's tough to win 3 in a row, which is what they would have
Agreed.
to do to win, but we'll see.
yeah. I think
Go ahead.
if Kyle Lowry doesn't play like he's Steph Curry and Klay Thompson plays like Klay Thompson, then I feel like knowing the Warriors, they're the only team I feel like who could come back. But I still think Toronto is going to take it because they have the momentum of like they're the underdog that wants it more. You know, everyone's talking about how KD and the free agency and this, like everyone's already past the finals already. You know, they're only people. So it's
I hate that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then let's wrap this sucker up. Thanks everyone for sticking around. Again, just a reminder: subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify. Follow on Instagram, Facebook. It's all again just Aged Out Podcast. It'll come up. And we'll just be back. Hopefully, with the next episode, will be after the season started. We might have a few shows that have happened and kind of get to see what everyone's doing this summer. So, Taha, thanks for joining us. I'm sure we'd love to have you on again to talk again, maybe after the summer or on. So, we'll see everybody next time.
Thank you guys.